So the book is about cities in China and India. Um, so these two countries, China and India, are frequently compared, especially in urban studies, because they are very similar in size, and also they have both of them have had tremendous urban growth in the last 30 years. So people compare cities in China and India all the time for different reasons. But when the two countries get compared, it's very easy to focus on regime types. So things work differently in China and India, and therefore people would think that it's because of the political regimes that China is not democratic and India is, and therefore things work differently in Chinese and Indian cities. So the political regimes or regime type hypothesis. So that's the most common explanation for the differences you see in cities in China and India. And for me, part of the reason for me to start working on this project was to dig a little bit deeper below the surface and see what are the actual differences in the way the local authorities manage urban affairs, and what are the causes explaining the different logics of urban governance. So I don't dispute the power of regime types, but I don't think political regimes can explain all the variations we see between China and India. So let me start with a super brief overview of the different urban trajectories of the two countries. So for China, the main driver for urban population growth for the last 40 years has been migration, especially rural to urban migration. China has almost very close to 300 million migrants, and most of them are rural to urban migrants. So that's the mechanism for urban population growth. And for India, it's a combination of factors, mainly three factors that have been driving urban growth. The main driver, unsurprisingly, is fertility, so natural population growth. And the second one, which is very interesting, it's in situ urbanization, which means people are not migrating to big cities, but the small towns where they live are changing, are urbanizing, because more and more people leave agriculture and take jobs in manufacturing and services. So that's what in situ urbanization means. And here I'm showing you two pictures from a small city or small town in the state of West Bengal. The place is called Singer. It's one of the places I studied for the book. So this is an example, perfect example of in situ urbanization or urbanizing small towns. A lot of residents, most residents don't work in the agriculture sector, and many of them commute to Calcutta, which is about an hour away to work, to study. So the place is completely urbanized. But in terms of the governing structure, Singer doesn't have a municipal government. It's managed by a cluster of village councils. In India, they call it village panchayats. So it means village governments. So that's a huge problem for places like Singer. These are basically small cities, but they don't have a local government. And without governments, they don't have the revenue. They don't have the tax revenue to provide services and even very basic infrastructure, such as paving roads. And across the country, about 15% of India's urban population can be traced to these urbanized small towns. So that's a major challenge faced by Indian cities. But the big story is for China, it's migration, rural to urban migration, that has been driving urban population growth. And for India, it's a combination of in situ urbanization, migration, but also natural population growth, so high fertility rates, all three that have been driving urban population growth. So that's a key difference between the two countries. And for the project, I'm mainly interested in the governance question. So who governs the Chinese and the Indian city, and how do these countries differently govern their cities? So that's the main topic or question I tried to address in the book. And my thesis is this: the territorial versus associational logic of urban governance. For China, if we look at how urban policies are made and how the policies are enforced or implemented, there's a very strong territorial logic because the policies, the making of the policies and also the implementation is strongly shaped by a very thick layer of local municipal institutions. And I call these institutions territorial institutions. And in the book, I gave many examples of what they are. For example, the hukou system, and also the system by which China promotes local officials. I use the word territorial because all of these institutions have ties to physical localities. So the hukou system, everybody has a hukou, and the hukou is registered in one physical locality. So that's what I mean by territorial. And for India, there's an absence of similar territorial institutions. And instead, policymaking and implementation is more fluid and very contingent upon coalition building between the public sector, the private sector, and also civil society groups. So I call that arrangement the associational approach to governing cities. So that's the main argument of the book.